Determination, or stubborn efforts despite all misgivings, has marked the career of most famous painters. 500 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci said, "A painter who has no doubts about his own ability will attain very little." At age 30, Whistler wrote to a friend, "Oh, Fatine, I know so little. I am horribly depressed. The work's so hard and uncertain. I am so slow." Camille Pissarro often piled his completed paintings facing the wall. "I am always terribly afraid," he said, "to turn around canvases and find monsters where I thought there were precious gems." John Constable tried his hand at portraiture and still lifes, but it was many trying years later, at age 48, that he became famous for his nature scenes. But Paul Gauguin probably best expressed the successful artist's attitude. He said, "Go on working freely and furiously. You will make progress, and sooner or later your worth will be recognized, if you have any." Margaret Holland Sargent agrees with Gauguin that tenacity is a necessary trait in a painter. She also believes in sharing her experience with those who wish to improve their artistic abilities.
Hi, welcome to Sargent Studio. Today we have a really exciting still life for you. We're going to be working with glass, metal, and wood, and other related objects. But first, let's take a look at the palette. This chart shows the colors on our palette. There are 14 hued colors. Hue is the name of a color. Like in the color wheel, red, yellow, and green. On the left is alizarin crimson. The other colors in this row are all cadmium barium colors. Red deep, red medium, red light, orange deep, orange, yellow deep, yellow medium, and yellow light. This orange is the color put out by most manufacturers of oil paint. This is Grumbacher's orange. It has a little more red in it. Cerulean blue is the lightest of the three blues. There's cobalt blue and ultramarine blue, the darkest blue. Phthalo green and viridian complete the hued colors on our palette. There are 8 neutrals. A neutral is a color completely lacking in hue, such as red, blue, or yellow. We have ivory black, permalba white, and 6 shades of gray from number 3 through number 8. Liquitex has saved us a lot of time by manufacturing these 6 shades of gray in a series. You'll notice that number 3 is the same value or lightness and darkness as red deep, as does number 4 to red medium. In the top range, yellow deep and orange have the same value as gray number 7. In summary, these grays are lined up with the other colors on our palette in terms of their value. One example of how to use these grays is to make an object seem round. For instance, if you can visualize this blob of red as being an apple, you could take a touch of this same value gray, number 3, mix it with a little of the red and apply it to the edge, and it will make that apple seem to just go away from the eye. Cerulean blue is just about the same value as gray number 3. The other 2 blues and the 2 greens, as well as alizarin crimson, are all darker in value than number 3. With just the paints on this palette, I'll be able to mix any color I need. Now, let's go take a look at the lighting setup. I use a 150-watt floodlight to illuminate my canvas and the palette, and over it I put a blue filter to convert the tungsten light to daylight. For my arrangement, I have a 150-watt spotlight, parabolic spotlight, and over it I have a blue filter as well. The reason I use the blue filters is it eliminates the red-orange effect that the tungsten light has, and otherwise your paintings would come out with a little too much red and orange in them. Now, for our sketch, I'm using a number 6 bristle brush and just some diluted neutral that has a drop of orange in it. It's a dark number 4 neutral. I'm trying to visualize in my mind where I want these objects to go, and I like to work very rapidly and not invest too much time on this. Just get a good placement. Those are the brushes because we don't want to go off. We want to get the placements in a rather abstract way and as rapidly as possible. And I see the milk pot about here. Cheese on the wooden chopping board with the edge of the table hitting, let's see, what goes from this corner down a little bit. I have it going off the edge, which means we'll raise the corner up here a tiny bit. And that hits about 2/3 of the way down. Comes off at this angle. Here we go. Knife comes off just a little bit there. So we lose that corner. Keep one here. We have basically 3 main objects in this still life. 3 main shapes, I should say. We have the copper pail and our glass bottle. With the wooden board and cheese. The knife is just here really to balance a little and add interest. With the brush coming out a little bit wrong angle, so I will dip my rag or paper towel into the paint thinner. Take it off. See how that, I think I need the bottle to go up higher. Table comes in there, and when you're doing this kind of sketching, you should train your eye to really judge placements by relative positions. How the lid of this compares with the position of one of these lines. And if you have trouble seeing it, you hold the brush out at eye length on the real object, and you can get some angles that may help you. Sometimes when something looks wrong, it's not the object that appears to be the problem that's always at fault. It could be something else relating to it. So before you make any major lengthy changes, examine the situation as a whole. Your shadow patterns will help too to establish positioning. So keep in mind that where they go and the relation space-wise between the shadows and the other objects. This is a long shadow here. This is where we have the light placed. And there's a lovely luminescent shadow that's caused by that glass. It goes right about that spot. At this point, you should take a step or two back and examine. Get a better view from the back of the room than you can standing up this close. Another trick, as I've mentioned many times before, is to take a little hand mirror and check everything in reverse. And you can very often spot problem areas immediately. I'm pretty happy with this placement. Just want to check one final time. Angles. That's my knife. And the shadow, the knife just going off the table. The angle of the table itself. We can work with these later if we find that we're unhappy. But at about this point, I would say, put down your brush and start analyzing the colors in the big masses. We're going to mix the background color first because it's the largest mass and it's in the back, so we generally work from the back forward. So let's get to the mixing. All right, that background color looks almost like a burnt umber. If you don't have burnt umber, you can get it by taking black and adding cadmium red light. That background is very, very dark. So we won't see many color changes, and it's a velour, so it doesn't reflect much and makes it very simple. What we want to do is get right in there and lay that background color on as soon as we can. For that, I'll take my number 18 broad bristle brush, take that burnt umber mixture and just lay it right in. You want to work fast as you can. Keep the paint and the ideas fresh. During this massing in process, it's a good time to recheck placement, and you can stay nice and loose. I'm using a little copal medium in with my mixture here. I like it because it's not only a good medium making the paint flow, but it leaves a nice shine on your work. I just paint right over those brushes. Not be too concerned about that. They'll go in later. I have my tabletop about that position. This glass being transparent is a particularly good place to just sort of slosh over, because you'll be needing that background color coming through anyway. And the background should sort of blend in here with the shadow side, so I'm going to brush that over a little bit. All right, now why don't we think about mixing the next largest mass, Looks to me like that's the tablecloth. All right, that cloth is pretty light in value. I'm going to reach up here and take my number 8 neutral, as it's not pure white, and try a little orange deep with that and some red light just to keep that warm mixture going. For the cloth, we're going to do a series because there is a color change that I see going on in that progression of the cloth from the point nearest the light to the distance further away from the light. I need some more gray here. And we'll try a little cadmium orange and orange deep with this. This would be a little bit closer to the light source. It has more yellow and more gold in it. It's almost imperceptible here, but it does make a difference in your painting. Keeps it alive. Okay, I think that's about what I want for that. Then for the final mixture, we'll do another pile here and add a little, we'll go up the scale, we'll add a little orange, and this time a little yellow deep because we're getting closer to the light. And I find it's helpful too to mix the colors on the palette in the same positions as they are going to be put on the canvas. So we have mixed the table area colors, but I think we'd better do the shadow as well and the halftone. There's a little halftone happening along here. So let's mix that next. All right, our halftone falls in about this area, so I'm going to take some number 6 neutral and some orange deep. I think I'll warm it up even more with some red light and see how we go. For a shadow, I'll drop down one more and use my number 4. This is the shadow on the table itself, from the objects, and warm that up with some orange deep. I'm going to start on the dark side of the cloth with my large brush, number 12 filbert. Using this larger brush helps speed up the process. And again, I'm not too worried about going over edges. I want to keep those edges soft, so we'll just go get it covered rapidly as possible. I'm using the second mixture in this area here, in the center. And progressing over to the first one nearest the light source. It has the more golden quality. Half-tone area right about here. That cloth goes away from the light. and a shadow area where that cloth is getting very little light, mostly reflected. Find the cast shadows on that cloth. Put those in quickly. And cut. Yeah. Notice that the cast shadow is almost the same as this shadow that goes up into the milk pail. So I'll just swim that together. That'll help unify the painting. You want to look for places like that all the time where you can use the same colors and the same, with the exception of the shadow that's being cast by the bottle. Keep those edges soft. Most of the shadows are going to be about the same value and color. For this copper pail, we'll be mixing a series of 5 colors. We have the general dark, general light. We'll have a halftone, accent, and a highlight. Looking at that, it seems to me that the light side is going to be about a number value 4 with some red light and maybe a touch of orange deep. Let's see what we get when we mix this. For the shadow side, I think we'll try a number 3 gray and put a little of the red light in with that. The red light will bring it up in value. And yet, you want to keep it that rich color. For the halftone, we'll try a little between 3 and 4. Drop some of that red light in. It's a pretty colorful section there. Seems like the highlighter going way up to 7. And we'll drop a little of the orange deep in that. We may have to go lighter, but we'll start here. The accent is the darkest of the darks, and I'm using alizarin in black. There is a strong reflected light coming in from the cheese, so I think I'll pick up some of this shadow mixture and just add more red light to that. And we'll be set. Needs more. We can adjust it later if we need to. We're ready to work on the milk pail, and as you know, we start from dark to light, so I'm picking up some of my dark shadow color, loosely working it into that side. There's a little tick down here, a shadow across there. Now we'll take another brush and work through the half tone copper, like most metal, is a little tricky because it reflects everything around it. And yet it has its own local color that affects the reflections. So I'll put the refinements in later. I may have, well, that's closer to halftone than light, so I'm going to add some white to that and see if that won't bring up the value. Yeah, that's better. Bring up the value. As it goes away from your eye and away from the light, that is going to get grayer. So I'll use the number 6. It seems to be the close-in value to the color of the copper. And it's also picking up a little of that background color. So I'll go over where I had saved a pile of background color and mix a tiny bit of that in my paint and use that to get the edge of that pale. The top, the same thing is happening, right about in here. The gray, it really does help you turn your objects away and make them seem more round. There's a part of the table that's reflecting up into the pale, giving a nice light, bright color. So I am taking more of the cadmium red light, adding white. See if we can't. A little orange deep is necessary too with that red light. Otherwise the red light makes it a little too pink. Copper does look pink a lot. If it's been recently polished, it's more pink. Get some reflections. There's the reflected light from the cheese. Going to reach up, take some of the background color and redefine this area up here. You don't want those little pieces of canvas showing. That background color is just about the color of the shadow on the pot, so I'll use it at least for now. For the general light on that glass bottle, I'm going to take some white and a drop of phthalo green. That phthalo is so powerful, you have to really be careful. You don't get too much. It takes over. But the bottle is a lovely bluish green. And I think this is going to be just about right. Then we'll use the phthalo and cerulean with a little number 7 gray. Cerulean blues it a little bit. Trying to get a half-tone color here. For a shadow, we will go with phthalo, cerulean, and number 6. 6 being down there in the gray value. Not quite, it's a little bit lighter actually, but the cerulean and phthalo are so dark that they compensate. I think that would be about the shadow color. For an accent, that's the darkest darks. The phthalo with a little drop of ultramarine. That keeps it in the blue category and is about as dark as you can get. For a highlight, white with just a touch. Well, we have a choice of cerulean or phthalo. I think I'll go with cerulean and see how that works. That's a very shiny glass jar, and the highlight is going to be almost white and a cool light. I'll try that. There's a brilliant reflected light in there. I'm going to use phthalo. It's just a dab, but the phthalo and the cerulean together are perfect, but they're too dark in value. So to bring them up, we'll add a little white. That should do it for those bright little reflected lights in there. Start with the dark side and just very loosely work that around. Darkest part is right there at the bottom. With the half tone, work it in that section around. Mix the half tone with a little of the tablecloth color that I saved. The bottle is transparent. So we're getting that cloth color behind it, mixed in with a little local color of the bottle. Down at the base it's darker because it's picking up the shadow. that it's casting on the cloth there. This part that turns away from the eye is grayer right in here. So I've used a little of my number 5 neutral gray mixed in with that. And as it goes up, it's reflecting some of the background color along that edge, so I've mixed a little of that with it. Now you see why I say to save. Mix more than you need of one particular color in an area so that you have something to go back with. I'm saving those brushes till a little bit later. I have to admit that large background brush is a little unwieldy at this point, so I'm going to take out another number 6 and have a little more control with that. Even though I mixed the colors for accent and highlight, I set them aside and I'll wait until I have my canvas covered before I put those on. We'll refine the shape a little bit on this bottle. I'll mix a little of the bottle color with a little of the tablecloth color for that shadow and just lay it right on. See if that will do the job for us. There's a shadow of those brushes. I'm going to add a little bit of gray, about a 5. Because it's going through the glass, it's lost some of that intensity. The edges, because of the thickness going through the two, seem a little darker and more colorful, so we'll indicate that. Trying to keep the edges soft. That's my number 6 blender. many ways to get soft edges. That's a quick and easy way. Now I'll be mixing the colors that we'll use in the wood. And for that, there'll be 5 of these: the general light, general dark, halftone, shadow, and accent. And I'm doing the general light. I picked up some of my neutral number 7 and dropped in a little orange. Let's see how that's going to work. I think that's pretty good. I need a little more orange. And for the half tone on the wood, I'll use a 6 and some orange deep. A little more. Seems to be about right. Okay, next I'll do the shadow, number 3, with red, light, and a touch of orange, deep. You can see how these neutral grays are very handy. You know just where to go for the right values. I'm going to, let's see, a little more of the gray in that shadow. For the accent, I'll just drop in a little black, some red deep. Should take care of the darkest dark. And the lightest light, or the highlight, number 7. And a little orange. Cadmium barium. That might be too much, just a touch. All right, we have our series for wood. Now let's put it on the canvas. We'll start right in with the shadow side. The shadow we used for the tabletop is pretty close to the shadow that we need for this board. It comes around, it goes into the halftone. Now we're working in the general light area. Find this getting a little more colorful as it picks up a little reflected light from that cheese, so I dropped a little more orange, my basic mixture. find that the rolled edge here is a little bit grayer. So I just find the value of gray that seems appropriate and put that in my basic mixture. This is the side nearest the light source, so it's going to get most of the light. And it too picks up a little bit of that orange near the cheese, so I'll add a touch more to the general light. It goes around the corner a bit. I'm going to just leave the accents and the highlights until later. At this point, we'll mix the colors for the cheese. The cheese, the light mixture, the side receiving the most light, looks to me like a nice bright orange. A little bit bright, so we'll take it down with some white and keep it light. The halftone on the cheese is about a 7 and orange deep. With the part of the cheese that's in shadow, it's down about a number 4. And orange deep. Let's try that. It's a pretty colorful area. Let me add more orange to that. Just dropped a little more orange in there to give it a richer quality. I may change it when I put it on the canvas. Now the last for the cheese would be the highlight, just white and a little orange. We'll start again with the dark side of the cheese. That's this plane that is not getting any light, no direct light. It's getting a lot of reflected light. Just lay that in. And the light side, it's getting a pretty strong direct light right in this plane. And a halftone effect where it's plane going away from the light up here. It's not as bright as the direct light, but it's not in shadow. Now I'm seeing more color on the shadow side at these edges where the light is coming through. It's just beautifully translucent here. So I'm mixing a little bit of cadmium red light with my shadow color and adding it along those areas there. I'll go back and pick up some of the shadow from the board and restate this in here. Find a place at the top. Oh, we just about have our, well, we do have the canvas covered now. Haven't placed the knife yet, so why don't we do that next? I'm going to position the knife, and for this I'm not going to be mixing any colors. For the blade, I can use my number 4 neutral. And the wood is already mixed, so I can dip into that. It seems like it's a combination of halftone and shadow, so I'll just mix a little dab of that. Place, let's see, that handle starts about here. Extends over a tiny bit. For the shadow underneath the knife, I'll just use my pre-mixed shadow color from before, the table that I used for the tablecloth. Saved a pile of that. That knife shadow comes down and goes off the bottom as the cloth goes off the table. Extend, I'll use a little smaller brush, extend the knife blade forward. Seems to come just a little bit further. It's getting a lovely reflection from the copper. So I'll just indicate a little of that right along the edge of the knife. I'm going to restate the shadow. Now onto the brushes in the bottle. Now to get the proper slant, I'm going to use the reverse side of my brush before I commit with paint and get an idea that I want that to come down about like that. And the smaller one is positioned in there about like so. I'm going to use the wood mixture that I made for the board for the brush handles. Mixed in with a tiny bit of that glass color mixture as the handle passes through the glass. It has a little dark tip, and I'll just add a little of the Viridian on my palette to indicate that tip. The other brush is a darker brown, so I'll use the mixture I made for the shadow side of the wood. Seems offhand about right. We'll see for the light side. And touch of the bottle color with it, as it goes through the glass. And I'll use a little bit of the light shade with some bottle color for that tip. No, I need more bottle color. It's a little too dark. There we go. Now I will paint the tops of those brushes. The very top one on the left seems to have a dark side, and I'll use my number 3 gray for that. That's the side that's on shadow. And there's a half-tone area as it crosses up here with the light side being about a number 7 neutral. For these bristles, I'll just use a lighter shade and let them just rough off that way. The other one has that bottle color of the green. It has a pointy shape. I'll do the shadow side. Okay, we have the canvas covered. All right, this is a good point to look at the painting as a whole and see where we can soften some edges and get this thing to unify itself a little more. The back of that cloth should recede, and we want that to look as though it's going away from you. So bringing a little of that background color into it automatically darkens it. We want this to be a very soft edge. A good way to do that is by taking some of the background color right in with the cloth. I'll be going over the whole painting this way, getting softer edges, which is a good way to do if you have to stop painting for any length of time. Can't come back to it right away, especially if you know it's going to dry before you can come back to it. Then try to leave the edges very soft so that when you can paint again, you're not totally committed. Shadows are very soft on the edges. They sharpen up as they come in closer to the object that's causing the shadow. This particular shadow is just disappears off the edge there. I want to work some of that right into the jug. Give that a nice painterly feeling. Because it is reflecting. That shadow's reflecting in there. I'm going to take a little gray mixture and mix it with the tablecloth back here so that I can get that to recede. I want to lose that corner and not have it so sharp. Could add that shadow from the brush. All right, at this point, I'll go back to my blue bottle and decide where I want to put those accents. Accents, as you know, are the darkest darks. I have already mixed some of those. I see there's a dark rim of glass at the bottom. There's a semi-dark area right through here. This comes toward the base, at the top. I'll switch to a smaller brush. And that beautiful, bright, reflected light occurs right down in here. That's where the light is bouncing back and forth through the glass. I see a touch of it right on that corner. Back there. I will start with the lower highlight. It's not quite so bright as the main highlight, and it occurs down about here. And there's another tick of a highlight right on the lip of that bottle. One where the light strikes it about there. And the main highlight, place as carefully as we can, just about there. Not as happy with that shape as I like, so I'm going to go back and modify it just a bit, and that's better. There are highlights on the brushes. White now, just toned down on the case of the brown brush, a little yellow deep. They occur at the bottom of the ferrule here. One tick of a highlight at the top. The other brush, I can use one of my very pale grays, I think number 8 or number 7, just in this position. All right. I'm squinting my eyes down here. The first thing I know I want to do is to soften this edge even more than I have it. And here. And add a little more of that rich, translucent, reddish color. I'm just using pure cadmium red light on my brush now and mixing it on the canvas in that fresh paint. The accent on the cheese is rather dark and has some red medium in it. It occurs right at the base of that. Nope, a little too dark. I added a little black. Not too much. The highlight on the cheese we've already mixed, so I'll just pick some of that up. My brush. It's very faint, but it comes right in here as the edge of the cheese hits that light. Goes back to nothing. The highlight on the wood is very difficult